The day the Jaren fleet arrived was a day that would forever be etched into the history of Earth. Humanity had watched the stars for centuries, wondering if they were alone in the universe. But no one could have prepared for the day when an entire armada of ships, larger than anything Earth had ever seen, appeared in the sky. The world held its breath as the first ship entered Earth's atmosphere, its sleek, silver surface reflecting the sunlight as if it were a second sun. People across the globe gazed up in awe, some in fear, others in wonder. The ships were a testament to the power and advancement of their owners. The Jaren were a race unlike any humanity had encountered before. They were beautiful, with features that seemed almost too perfect. Eyes like shimmering pools of silver, skin that glowed faintly under the sun, and hair that cascaded like dark waves of silk. But these features weren't just for show. The Jaren were also warriors, known for their strength and skill in battle. For the past few days, humanity had been preparing for contact. The leaders of Earth had no idea what the Jaren wanted or why they had come. The news was full of speculation. Some thought it was an invasion. Others believed it could be a peace offering. But no one knew for sure. The only thing that was certain was that Earth was no longer alone in the vastness of space. Among the many humans who waited for the moment of first contact, one stood out, Captain Elias Hunter. A seasoned military officer, Elias had spent most of his life defending Earth from threats, both known and unknown. He was strong, smart, and unafraid of facing the unknown. It was these qualities that had earned him the honor of representing humanity in the most important meeting of their existence. As the Jaren ships landed on Earth, a great silence fell over the world. The air was thick with anticipation. Elias stood in front of a massive crowd at the United Nations headquarters, flanked by representatives from every nation. The Jaren had requested a single human to meet with their leader, Queen Layla, to establish communication. Elias had been chosen. He knew the importance of this moment. It wasn't just about him or the Jaren. It was about the future of humanity. The world watched as he stepped forward, his uniform crisp and his posture confident. His heart beat in his chest, but his mind remained calm. He had faced down many enemies in his life, but this was different. The Jaren were not like any opponent he had ever faced. They were a race of warriors who had conquered planets and built empires. To them, Earth was just another small world in a vast galaxy. But to Elias, Earth was home, and he would do anything to protect it. The Jaren leader, Queen Layla, stepped out of her ship. She was everything the reports had said she would be: tall, regal, and undeniably beautiful. Her silver eyes shone as she gazed down at the crowd, her posture straight and proud. The moment she saw Elias, there was a flicker of something in her eyes, curiosity, perhaps, or a challenge. She had been told of the strength of human will, but now she would see it for herself. Elias took a deep breath and walked towards her, his boots echoing in the silence. He had been briefed on the Jaren's customs, but nothing could have prepared him for the sight of her standing there. It was as if the air itself had shifted, the weight of her presence pressing against him. Yet he didn't falter. This was his moment, and he would not let fear take hold. When he reached her, they stood facing each other, both sizing the other up. There was an unspoken tension in the air, a silent challenge between the two leaders. Queen Layla was the first to speak. Her voice was like music, deep and resonant. "You are the one they sent?" she asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. There was a coldness in her tone, as if she was already dismissing him as unworthy. "I am," Elias replied, his voice steady. "I am Captain Elias Hunter, and I represent Earth." Queen Layla's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer, studying him with a look that seemed to see through him. She didn't speak for a moment, as if weighing his worth. Elias knew that this was more than just a greeting. This was a test, and how he performed in this first exchange would set the tone for everything that followed. "I have come to see for myself if your species is worthy of our attention," she said, her voice carrying an air of authority. "Many of your kind believe you are strong. I will soon learn if that is true." Elias nodded, understanding that this was only the beginning. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. But he knew that the real test wasn't in his words. It was in his actions. And for the first time, he wondered just what kind of challenge he would face from this beautiful, deadly race. As the first contact continued, Elias felt a strange sense of determination rising within him. No matter what, he would prove to the Jaren and to himself that humanity was capable of more than anyone had ever expected, and he would do it without fear. The air was thick with silence as Captain Elias Hunter stood face to face with Queen Layla, the leader of the Jaren. The crowd behind them, watching from a distance, held their collective breath. This was the moment that would define the future of Earth. The two leaders were in the middle of a vast open space, with the towering Jaren ships in the background, their sleek bodies glimmering in the daylight. Queen Layla's eyes locked onto Elias, her gaze unwavering. She was everything the reports had described: beautiful, powerful, and unyielding. Her silver eyes seemed to pierce through him, as if measuring his worth in an instant. Elias, however, didn't flinch. He stood tall and straight, a symbol of humanity's strength and resolve. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He knew that the Jaren would not easily be swayed by words alone. It would take more than that to prove humanity's worth. "I have heard many things about your kind," Queen Layla said, her voice smooth like the sound of wind over a calm sea. There was no emotion in her tone, just cold curiosity. "Some say you are strong. Others claim you are brave. But I will see for myself." Elias took a deep breath, then stepped forward slightly, closing the distance between them. He could feel the weight of her words pressing on him. This wasn't just a greeting. This was a challenge. But he was ready. "We are not perfect," Elias replied, his voice steady and firm. "But we are strong in ways that no one can easily understand. We don't give up, no matter the odds." Queen Layla raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued by his response. She had expected him to be intimidated, to hesitate before her. But Elias stood with a quiet confidence that seemed to spark a sense of respect in her. She nodded once, as if to acknowledge his courage, but said nothing more. She wasn't ready to show her hand just yet. "We will see how long that strength lasts," she said, her words like a challenge. "For now, I will give you a chance to prove it." The tension between them was thick, but Elias didn't back down. He had trained for moments like this, moments where everything depended on a single choice. And in this moment, the choice was clear. He would meet her gaze, speak the truth of humanity, and show her that Earth was not a world to be ignored. Before the conversation could continue, a soft hum interrupted the silence. One of the Jaren officers, a tall figure in dark armor, stepped forward and bowed slightly to Queen Layla. "Your Majesty," the officer said, "we have prepared the arena for the first challenge." Elias looked around, realizing that the challenge had already begun. The Jaren didn't waste time. They were a people who valued action over words. Queen Layla glanced at him, her eyes gleaming with something akin to amusement. "This is how it is done among my people," she said. "Words mean little. Action speaks the loudest." Elias nodded. He was used to challenges, used to fighting for what was right. But this would be unlike anything he had faced before. The Jaren were not just skilled warriors. They were legends in their own right. Yet there was something in his chest that refused to back down. He could feel the eyes of the world on him. The stakes were higher than ever before. But he had one thing that no Jaren could match: his unshakable belief in humanity. The arena was vast, a massive open space surrounded by high walls. At the center of the arena stood a large stone platform, where the first challenge would take place. A crowd of Jaren warriors gathered around, their piercing eyes fixed on Elias. Some whispered among themselves, their voices barely audible, while others watched him with cold indifference. Queen Layla stood at the edge of the arena, her posture regal and commanding. She didn't speak, but her eyes never left Elias. He could feel her gaze, like a weight pressing on his shoulders. She wanted to see him fail. She wanted to see him crumble under the pressure. But Elias wouldn't let that happen. He had faced worse odds, and he had always come through. One of the Jaren warriors stepped forward, a tall, muscular figure with a look of confidence on his face. He wore dark armor, his hands gripping a massive sword that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. Elias could tell by the way he moved that this was no ordinary opponent. This was a warrior at the peak of his abilities. "You will face me in combat," the warrior said, his voice deep and steady. "If you win, I will consider your claim of strength. If you lose, you will show the world that your species is not worth our time." Elias nodded, stepping forward into the arena. His heart was calm now, his mind focused. He had been in countless battles, but this was different. This was a test not just of his skills, but of humanity's place in the universe. The crowd fell silent as the two warriors squared off. Queen Layla watched, her silver eyes gleaming. She had seen many challenges, but none quite like this. She didn't know it yet, but this human, this Captain Elias Hunter, was about to show her something she had never expected. The air in the arena was thick with anticipation. Captain Elias Hunter stood facing his opponent, a towering Jaren warrior named Tarek. The crowd of Jaren watched in silence, their eyes fixed on the two combatants. Queen Layla stood to one side, her posture regal and unwavering, her silver eyes never leaving Elias. This was the first trial, a test of strength and skill that would determine whether humanity had the power to stand beside the Jaren or be swept aside like so many other species. Elias knew what was at stake. The Jaren had made it clear from the start. If he failed, humanity's future would be in jeopardy. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for the survival of Earth. His mind raced as he studied Tarek, the Jaren warrior in front of him. Tarek's armor gleamed under the bright lights of the arena, and his eyes were filled with the cold certainty of someone who had never been defeated. But Elias had something that Tarek didn't. He had humanity's adaptability and his own quick thinking. He wasn't as strong as the Jaren warriors, but he had trained for moments like this. He knew how to use his environment, his speed, and his wits to his advantage. The fight began with a sudden rush. Tarek charged forward with impressive speed, his massive sword raised high. Elias barely had time to react. He ducked to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly swing of the sword. The force of the blow caused the ground beneath them to shake, but Elias was already moving. He darted around Tarek, staying out of range of the warrior's strikes. The crowd of Jaren murmured as Elias avoided another powerful swing. Tarek was fast, but Elias was faster. He had learned long ago that speed and precision could overcome strength. The Jaren warriors were skilled, but they relied heavily on their power. Elias wasn't interested in matching strength with Tarek. Instead, he used his agility to stay out of reach, making quick strikes when the opportunity presented itself. Tarek growled in frustration as he swung his sword again, only to miss by inches. He was getting angrier with each failed strike. He was not used to being outmaneuvered. His eyes flashed with irritation. But he didn't stop. He was a trained warrior, and no human would make a fool of him. Elias, on the other hand, remained calm. He took a deep breath and focused. He knew that the longer the fight went on, the more Tarek would tire. The Jaren were powerful, but they weren't invincible. Elias just had to outlast him. Tarek swung his sword again, this time with more force than ever before. But Elias was ready. He ducked low, rolling under the massive blade, and coming up behind Tarek. In one fluid motion, he grabbed a loose piece of metal from the ground and threw it at the warrior's legs. The piece of metal struck Tarek's armor with a sharp clang, causing him to stumble. The crowd gasped. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it was enough to throw off Tarek's balance. Elias didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, using the momentary distraction to deliver a swift kick to Tarek's side. The Jaren warrior staggered but managed to stay on his feet, though his breathing was now heavier. Queen Layla watched with keen interest. She had expected this trial to be a simple demonstration of strength, but Elias was showing her something else. The human was clever, resourceful, and unafraid. He was fighting with a calm determination that was beginning to earn her respect. Tarek growled again, his patience running thin. He turned to face Elias, his expression fierce. "You will not defeat me with tricks, human," he snarled. Elias didn't respond. He was too focused on the fight to waste words. He knew that Tarek's anger could be his weakness. The Jaren were proud, and their pride often led them to make mistakes. Elias just had to be patient. The two combatants circled each other, their eyes locked. Tarek's breathing was ragged now, and Elias could see the first signs of fatigue in the warrior's movements. He wasn't as invincible as he appeared. Elias' strategy was working. Suddenly, Tarek lunged forward with a roar, his sword aiming straight for Elias. The human captain was ready. With a swift sidestep, he avoided the blow and reached out to grab Tarek's arm. In one smooth motion, he twisted Tarek's arm behind his back, forcing the larger warrior to his knees. The crowd gasped in disbelief. Elias had done the impossible. He had taken down a Jaren warrior. For a moment, there was silence in the arena. Tarek struggled against Elias' grip, but the human captain held firm. He had won, not through brute strength, but through strategy, quick thinking, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. Queen Layla's eyes widened slightly as she watched the scene unfold. She had not expected this. She had expected Elias to falter, to make a mistake, but he hadn't. He had proven that humanity could be just as skilled, just as worthy of respect as any other race. Tarek finally stopped struggling, his pride wounded. He glared up at Elias but said nothing. He knew that he had been defeated, and there was nothing he could do about it. Elias released his grip on Tarek's arm and stepped back. He didn't gloat, didn't show any sign of triumph. He had won, but this was not the time for celebration. The fight was over, and now it was time to see what Queen Layla would do next. The silence in the arena stretched on. Then, Queen Layla stepped forward, her voice cutting through the stillness. "Well done, human," she said, her tone calm, but with a hint of respect. "You have shown that strength is not the only measure of a warrior." Elias nodded, not needing any further words. He had earned his place. The arena was still buzzing with excitement after Elias had defeated Tarek. The crowd of Jaren warriors stood in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. Queen Layla had not expected the human to win, let alone with such skill and strategy. As Elias stood in the center of the arena, breathing steadily and keeping his calm, he could feel the weight of their gazes on him. This was far from over. The first challenge had been won, but there were more tests to come. Queen Layla stepped forward, her silver eyes never leaving Elias. She didn't speak right away, allowing the silence to stretch for a moment. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with curiosity and respect. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "You have proven your strength, human," she said, her voice calm but filled with authority. "But strength is only one part of a warrior. Now you will face the test of wisdom." Elias straightened, ready for whatever came next. He had known the Jaren valued strength, but they also held intelligence and strategy in high regard. If he was going to prove humanity's worth, he would have to show that they were more than just fighters. They were thinkers too. Queen Layla gestured toward a large structure at the far side of the arena. It looked like a giant, intricately designed puzzle, with walls that seemed to shift and change before Elias' eyes. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The structure was a maze, but not in the traditional sense. It was a test of both mind and body, a challenge that required problem-solving, speed, and precision. "This is the test of the mind," Queen Layla explained. "You will enter the maze and retrieve the crystal at its center. But be warned, only those with true wisdom can find the way. The walls will shift, the paths will change, and the challenges will grow more difficult as you progress. Fail, and you will be trapped forever. Succeed, and you will prove that you are worthy to stand among the greatest. Elias took a deep breath. This was a challenge unlike anything he had ever faced. It wasn't about brute strength or quick reflexes. It was about thinking ahead, anticipating the moves, and understanding the puzzle before him. He had faced many difficult situations in his career, but this was something new. Still, he felt a spark of excitement. It was a different kind of test, but he was ready for it. The entrance to the maze was a large archway, its edges glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. As Elias stepped forward, he could feel the air around him grow colder, the ground beneath him shifting. He didn't look back. The sound of the crowd's murmurs faded as he entered the maze, his mind already working through the puzzle in front of him. At first, the maze seemed simple enough. Straightforward paths led in every direction, and the walls weren't too high. Elias walked carefully, his senses alert. He knew that the maze would test him, but he wasn't about to rush. The Jaren had said the walls would shift. And sure enough, as he turned a corner, the ground beneath him trembled. A large wall moved into place, blocking his path and forcing him to change direction. The maze was alive, shifting in real time, responding to his movements. Elias paused, trying to figure out his next move. He could feel his heart rate steadying as he thought through his options. Panic wouldn't help him now. He remembered something from his training: always stay calm, even when things seem impossible. He had been in tight situations before, but this was different. The maze wasn't about fighting. It was about thinking, adapting, and overcoming. He turned around and retraced his steps, studying the walls carefully. The puzzle was more complex than it had first appeared. The walls seemed to move deliberately, responding to his choices and testing his ability to think strategically. Elias couldn't afford to make a wrong move. One mistake could trap him forever. As he walked, he noticed small, glowing symbols on the walls. Runes, perhaps, or markers. They didn't make sense at first, but then it clicked. The symbols were clues. Each one marked a correct path, a way forward. He studied the glowing runes, recognizing the patterns. Slowly, methodically, he followed the symbols, each step taking him closer to the center of the maze. But the maze wasn't done with him yet. As he rounded a corner, the floor beneath him suddenly gave way, and he dropped down into a lower level of the maze. He landed hard but quickly pushed himself to his feet. The walls here were taller, the paths narrower, and the air colder. The maze had become more dangerous. Elias looked around, analyzing the new environment. There was no time to lose. He needed to keep moving. As he pressed on, he encountered more challenges: hidden traps, shifting walls, and puzzles that seemed designed to break his resolve. But each time, Elias took a deep breath, cleared his mind, and solved the puzzle before him. It wasn't just about strength. It was about understanding the maze, reading the signs, and moving with purpose. Finally, after what felt like hours of navigating the maze, Elias reached the center. There, glowing in the middle of the room, was the crystal. It shimmered with an inner light, radiating an energy that seemed almost alive. Elias approached it carefully, his hand reaching out to grasp the crystal. As his fingers touched its surface, a surge of energy filled him, and the walls of the maze began to shift one last time. The path behind him opened, and the exit became clear. Elias stepped forward, holding the crystal high. The maze had been difficult, but he had succeeded. He had proven that humanity was capable of more than just strength. They could think, adapt, and overcome even the most complex challenges. As he emerged from the maze, the Jaren warriors watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. Queen Layla stood at the edge of the arena, her eyes narrowing as she observed Elias. He had passed the test of wisdom, and now she would decide what to do next. Elias stood at the edge of the arena, the crystal in his hand still glowing faintly. The crowd of Jaren warriors was silent, watching him with a mixture of awe and respect. He had passed the test of wisdom, a feat few had ever accomplished. But he knew this wasn't the end. Queen Layla had said there would be one final challenge, and Elias wasn't naive enough to think he was finished yet. Queen Layla stepped forward, her silver eyes gleaming with a sharp intensity. Her gaze flicked briefly to the crystal in Elias' hand before returning to his face. She spoke in a voice that carried the weight of centuries. "You have proven your strength and your wisdom, human," she said. "But now you will face the final test, the test of the heart." Elias felt a shift in the air. The crowd seemed to hold its breath, and for the first time, he noticed something different in Queen Layla's eyes. There was no amusement, no challenge. There was only a deep, quiet seriousness, as if she was preparing him for something far greater than what had come before. "Before you is a choice," Queen Layla continued. "You must decide whether to accept the way of the Jaren or return to your people with what you have learned. This is not a test of strength, nor a test of intellect. It is a test of who you truly are." Elias was silent, trying to understand what she meant. The words felt heavy, but he could see that this challenge wasn't something he could prepare for with training or strategy. It wasn't about outsmarting an opponent or showing off his strength. This test would require him to confront himself and his values. Queen Layla motioned to the side, where two paths lay open. One path was lit with the soft glow of purple light, leading toward a large ornate structure, its walls decorated with strange symbols and carvings that Elias had never seen before. The other path was dark, shrouded in shadow, with no clear end in sight. "Take the path of light," Queen Layla said, "and you will embrace the Jaren way. You will join us, and we will guide you toward a new future. But take the path of darkness, and you will return to your people, carrying with you the lessons you have learned. The choice is yours." Elias stared at the two paths, his mind racing. The path of light seemed tempting. To join the Jaren, to become part of their great civilization, would be an honor. He had seen their power and their wisdom, and there was no denying that they were an advanced species. Their culture, their knowledge, it was a dream for many. But something held him back. He thought of Earth, of the people he had left behind. The people who had looked to him for leadership. Elias was human, and while the Jaren were incredible in many ways, he couldn't forget the uniqueness of humanity. Earth had its own strengths, its own potential. He had come here not to become like the Jaren, but to prove that humanity had a place in the universe. Taking a deep breath, Elias turned away from the path of light and began walking toward the darkness. The crowd shifted nervously, their whispers rising. Queen Layla's eyes followed him, her expression unreadable. Elias wasn't sure what he would find in the darkness. It could be a test of survival, or it could be something far more dangerous. But he knew one thing for certain. He had to make this choice not just for himself, but for the future of Earth. Humanity could not afford to simply follow in the footsteps of other races. They needed to find their own path, to rise to their own challenges. As Elias moved further into the shadowed path, the air grew colder and the sounds of the crowd began to fade. He could hear his own footsteps echoing in the silence, the weight of the choice pressing on his shoulders. This path seemed endless, the darkness thickening around him with every step. But still, he moved forward. The farther he went, the more he felt a sense of isolation. There were no signs, no guiding lights, nothing but the path ahead. It was as though the Jaren were testing his resolve, forcing him to rely solely on his inner strength. After what felt like hours, Elias came to a clearing. In the center stood a massive stone structure, ancient and weathered. At its base was a small pedestal, and atop the pedestal rested a glowing orb. It pulsed with energy, casting a soft, blue light across the clearing. It was beautiful, and yet something about it felt off. Elias couldn't explain it, but he felt a pull toward it. He stepped closer to the pedestal, his hand reaching out toward the orb. As his fingers touched its surface, a surge of energy coursed through him. Images flashed in his mind, visions of Earth, of his people, of the countless lives that depended on him. He saw humanity's potential, its ability to overcome even the greatest challenges, and he saw the struggles they would face in the future. It was a powerful vision, one that left him breathless. The orb pulsed one final time before dimming, its light fading away. Elias stood there, motionless, the weight of the vision settling over him. He understood now. The test of the heart wasn't about joining the Jaren or rejecting them. It was about understanding what was truly important, about seeing the value in humanity's journey and in the choices they would make as a species. Elias turned around and began walking back toward the arena, the orb's vision still fresh in his mind. He had made his choice. He would return to Earth, not as a follower of the Jaren, but as a leader of his own people. As he stepped back into the light, Queen Layla's eyes met his once again. This time, there was no judgment in her gaze, only quiet acknowledgement. She had seen the strength in him, and she knew that humanity would not be easily dismissed. "You have passed, human," she said softly. "You have shown us the power of your heart." Elias nodded. His journey wasn't over yet, but he had taken the first step. Elias walked out of the shadowed path and back into the light of the arena. The air was different now, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He had made his choice, and he felt a sense of calm settle over him. He knew what he had to do next. The journey had been long, but it was only just beginning. The crowd of Jaren warriors watched him closely, their eyes full of curiosity and respect. Queen Layla stood before him, her posture proud and regal, yet there was a softness in her expression that Elias hadn't seen before. She didn't speak right away, but her eyes were filled with a quiet understanding. She knew that Elias had passed her final test. She knew that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through strength, not through intellect alone, but through heart and determination. "Elias Hunter," Queen Layla began, her voice echoing through the arena, "you have proven yourself in ways that few have ever done. You have shown wisdom, strength, and courage, but most importantly, you have shown us the power of the human heart. I have seen your people's potential, and I now believe in it." Elias looked at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and gratitude. He had come here with a mission, to prove that humanity had a place among the stars. But what he hadn't expected was that, in doing so, he would come to realize just how much Earth still had to offer. He had seen the future, and now he was ready to face it. "Thank you, Queen Layla," Elias replied, his voice steady. "But the future of humanity isn't about one person. It's about all of us working together. Earth has a long way to go, but we will get there. We will stand alongside the Jaren and other species, but on our own terms. We won't simply follow. We will lead in our own way." Queen Layla nodded slowly, as if contemplating his words. The silence between them was thick, but not uncomfortable. It was a moment of mutual respect, a moment that would forever change the course of both their lives. "You are wise beyond your years, human," Queen Layla said, her voice softening. "Perhaps there is more to your people than even we understood. But know this, you are not alone. There are others like you. The galaxy is full of potential, full of challenges, and full of opportunities. It is not an easy road, but I believe you are ready." Elias felt a wave of warmth spread through him. He had come here unsure of what he would find, unsure of what the future held. But now he had confidence. The path ahead was still unclear, but he was no longer afraid to walk it. "The Jaren will stand with you, Elias Hunter," Queen Layla continued. "In time, we will help your people grow. But it is up to you and your people to choose the path you wish to follow. And remember, our strength is not in our power alone. It is in our ability to adapt, to learn, and to work together." Elias nodded. "We will," he said simply. As the queen finished speaking, the Jaren warriors around the arena began to move. Their expressions were no longer cold and distant. Instead, they were filled with admiration, even a sense of awe. Elias had done the impossible. He had earned the respect of the Jaren, not through force, but through his actions, his choices, and his willingness to stand by his people. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his mission settling in once more. This was just the beginning. The future of humanity was still uncertain, but he now had allies in high places. The Jaren had made their decision. They would help Earth, but it wasn't just about them. It was about the humans who had fought to protect their home, the scientists who had dreamed of the stars, and the leaders who had worked to bring their people together. It was about every person on Earth who had ever believed in the potential of humanity. Elias turned to face the crowd, raising the crystal he had retrieved from the maze high above his head. The light from the crystal shimmered in the air, casting a glow that seemed to reach the very stars above. He felt a sense of unity in that moment, both with the Jaren and with his own people. They were not so different after all. Both species shared the same dreams, the same hopes for a better future. And now, they would walk that path together. The road ahead will be difficult, Elias said, his voice carrying across the arena. But we will face it with strength, with wisdom, and with unity. Together, we will rise. Together, we will build a future that is brighter than any of us could have imagined. For Earth, for the Jaren, and for all the species that will come to stand by our side. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound echoing throughout the arena. It wasn't just a cheer for Elias, it was a cheer for the future. For the future of humanity, for the future of the galaxy, and for the promise of what was to come. As Elias stood there, surrounded by the warriors of the Jaren and the glistening stars above, he knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more trials, more challenges, and more decisions to make. But he was ready to lead humanity into a new era, ready to face whatever the future might hold. And with the Jaren at his side, he knew they had the strength to overcome anything. Elias stood at the edge of the Jaren city, the evening sun casting a golden glow over the vast landscape. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of alien plants and the distant hum of Jaren technology. The grand city stretched before him, its towering spires and glowing lights unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth. Yet there was something about it that felt familiar, a sense of possibility, of hope that he had not felt in a long time. He had come here with only one goal in mind: to prove that humanity had a place in the stars. Now, standing at the threshold of a new future, he realized that he had done more than that. He had opened the door to an entirely new chapter for Earth, one where humanity could not only survive but thrive. As he walked through the city, Elias felt the weight of the choices he had made. The Jaren had kept their word. They would help Earth, offering their knowledge and resources to assist in humanity's development. But the responsibility was still his, and it would not be easy. The Jaren were powerful, but they had their own way of life, their own traditions. It was up to humanity to find its own path, to build its future with the guidance of others, but never at the cost of their own identity. He passed by Jaren warriors who nodded respectfully as he approached, their eyes filled with respect. He had earned their admiration, not through combat, but through understanding, wisdom, and a willingness to listen. It was a feeling he cherished, one that would carry him forward on this difficult journey. Soon, Elias found himself in front of a grand building, its walls shimmering with a soft, blue light. It was the place where the leaders of the Jaren met to discuss matters of importance. Queen Layla had invited him here to speak about the future of Earth, and he knew this was a turning point in his life. He was no longer just a representative of humanity. He was a bridge between two worlds, two civilizations. The doors of the building opened as Elias approached, and he stepped inside. The room was vast, filled with Jaren leaders who looked up as he entered. The air was thick with anticipation. These beings, once distant and untouchable, were now his allies. They had seen the potential in humanity, but it was still unclear how they would work together to shape the future. Queen Layla stood at the front of the room, her silver eyes gleaming with an almost imperceptible smile. She gestured for Elias to join her, and he walked forward, his heart steady, but his mind racing. "Elias Hunter," Queen Layla began, her voice strong yet warm. You have proven yourself worthy, not only as a warrior, but as a leader. You have earned our respect. And now, it is time to discuss the future. The future of Earth, and the future of all species who choose to work together. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He wasn't just here to represent Earth anymore. He was here to make decisions that would affect millions, perhaps billions, of lives. The responsibility was enormous, but he knew he was ready for it. We stand on the edge of a new era, Queen Layla continued. Humanity has proven that it can rise to meet the challenges of the galaxy. We will share our knowledge with you, but you must use it wisely. The galaxy is vast, and there are many dangers, many unknowns. But together, we can face them. Together, we can build a future where all species coexist and thrive. Elias felt a sense of unity in her words. This was what he had hoped for when he had first arrived on Jarin. The promise of cooperation, of mutual respect. The future was still uncertain, but he now knew that humanity would not face it alone. Thank you, Queen Layla, Elias said, his voice steady. I understand the gravity of this responsibility, and I will do everything I can to ensure that humanity stands tall in the galaxy. We will not forget our roots, but we will also embrace the future. Together, we will rise. The room was silent for a moment, the leaders of the Jarin watching him closely. Then, one by one, they nodded in approval. The respect in their eyes was unmistakable. Elias had earned it. As the meeting continued, discussions about Earth's future, its integration with the Jarin, and the challenges they would face filled the room. It was not an easy road ahead, but Elias knew they would face it together. The Jarin would help guide humanity, but humanity would have to find its own way forward. Hours passed, and eventually, the meeting came to an end. As the leaders filed out of the room, Queen Layla stayed behind. She looked at Elias with a thoughtful expression, as if weighing her next words carefully. You have done more than I ever expected, Elias, she said. You have proven that humanity is more than just a species trying to survive. You have shown that you are capable of creating your own future, not as followers, but as equals. The galaxy is full of challenges, but I believe humanity will rise to meet them. Elias smiled, feeling a sense of pride. This was only the beginning, but it was a beginning that felt right. Earth would face many challenges, but it would also have allies, wisdom, and the strength to overcome anything. And with the Jarin at their side, humanity had a chance to not only survive but thrive. Thank you, Queen Layla, Elias said, his voice filled with gratitude. Together, we will face whatever comes next. As he left the grand building, Elias looked out over the Jarin city one last time. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of promise. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. And with that, the journey had only just begun.